Welcome back, Psych 1 students. This is Mr. Ray. Today we're going to be talking about globalization and identity. It is a pretty short slideshow today. It's not as long as my other ones. And then there's an assignment at the end that you can look at. And it'll also be posted on Google Classroom with a little template for it. So here we go. So globalization, as you read from the reading, this was the very first sentence, but globalization is just an interaction and integration among people of different nations. I'm going to turn my laser on here so I can shine it in everyone's face. Hey, so just like this map shows, there's lines connecting people all over the world in different ways, and we'll talk about some of those ways later. But the idea is that we're not just interacting with people in our little circle in Milwaukee here. We are interacting with people all over the globe on a daily basis through a lot of different ways. Okay, and that's going to have a lot of effects on our culture, identity, our behavior, which we're going to kind of talk about today. So, very simply put, globalization is just exposure to other cultures. Okay, without interacting with other nations, we want to be able to be exposed to any cultures outside of our own community. Just like I said on the map here, if we were only in Milwaukee and we never left Milwaukee, we would not know even what culture was like in New York or even Europe or anywhere in the world. Okay, so this exposure to other nations allows us to view other cultures, and with that, we get two things from it. This is what we learned last time. We have enculturation, which is the process of adopting or internalizing the schemas of our culture. When we are exposed to other cultures, we start thinking about why our culture does certain things. So if your culture, like let's say you were of a Mormon religion and you don't do anything on Sundays, and you meet someone who is not a Mormon and they are able to do stuff on Sundays, you would process and internalize your culture and think, okay, like why do we do this? What about our culture makes us this way, or makes us behave in this way? And then acculturation is coming in contact with a different culture and adopting their norms or behaviors as your own. So we would not have this process without globalization, because we couldn't come in contact with any culture, because we'd just be stuck in our own. So globalization is huge in terms of developing our culture and identity, because of simply just this exposure. Without the exposure, we would not be able to learn anything about other people, and then that would not affect how we think about our culture, because that would just be the norm, and then we would not be able to learn about any other cultures. So, three main ways that we become more connected globally, and I'm guessing you guys probably know these, but we're going to go over 3 T's, okay? Technology, trade, and travel. Okay? Technology, obviously, we can call someone on the other side of the world. We can be friends with them on Facebook. We can hop on a Zoom meeting with them. We can watch a TikTok by them. Okay, technology allows us to be exposed to a lot of different types of cultures all across the world. Even things as simple as watching the news and seeing what other cultures are like. That's an example of technology allowing us to see other cultures and increase globalization. Trade, obviously I bet you could probably take out something right now that you have on you and it's probably made in a country not in the United States, and that's an example of globalization. Okay, we're being connected through different products, different trade. We have things here in the United States that we trade with other nations, and that allows us to be exposed to other cultures. You can go on Amazon and order things from another country and they'll be shipped to your door, and that's a way of being exposed to other cultures through globalization. And then the last one is travel. I don't know, if I were in class, I'd ask you guys, how many of you have been to another country? Raise your hands. Okay, I hope some of you guys just raised your hand at your desk, or at least were thinking about raising your hand if you would have. But if you ever traveled to a different country, even outside of Milwaukee, that's an example of globalization too. Okay, you're being exposed to other cultures. I think about like when I went to a trip to New York a couple years ago. We were able to walk around and just kind of see the culture in New York and see how people acted in New York, and it's a lot different than how people act here. So that's a way for us to connect globally. Obviously, that's within the United States, but it's the same concept. So again, when we think about globalization, how do we do that? We think of the 3 T's: technology, trade, and travel. All right. So as a result of globalization, we have local culture versus global culture, and I hope you guys wrote this down in your vocab notes. But local culture is the culture that is closest to us. It's what we live in, it's what we grew up in, and it's what we share with those around us. So your immediate family, okay, maybe your neighborhood, maybe your part of the country, whatever. Okay, that local culture is what you are used to. It's what you is close to home to you. And then global culture is culture that you learn through contact with other people around the world. So you live in Milwaukee your entire life, and we have a new student from another state comes in or another country and teaches you about their culture. That's an example of exposure to a global culture. It could also be you go on a trip to a foreign country or another state, and you learn their culture and you bring it back and you start adopting it. Okay, so we take this local culture that we grew up in, and we take the global culture from what we have learned from others, and we create what's called a bicultural identity. Okay, and that's just simply a combination of local and global cultures. Like we talked in the last video lesson, we are not a combination of just a singular culture. We're through the process of interacting with all different kinds of people from all around the world, we create our culture and our identity based on our interactions. But again, bicultural, bi means two, local and global culture. Okay, and what this can create sometimes, especially in adolescence, is something called identity confusion. That it's a stage in development, Erickson's psychosocial development theory. If you want to learn more about that, you can just Google it. It's not in our curriculum, so we won't be going over it, but it is a very famous psychology theory. And essentially what happens is, as you are exposed to these different cultures or these different global cultures, global interactions through globalization, you get confused about what your identity is, because you start adopting things from this culture and this part of the world, and oh, you really like what this state does, but then you're mixing that with your local culture, and it's going to make it different than what you know. So you look around you, and your family, your friends, your teachers, your neighbors, whatever, they have a different identity and behavior set than you do because they haven't had the same interaction as you. And what that results in is sometimes adolescents can lack confidence because they think that they're different than their parents or they're different than their peers, and they don't really know who they are because they're not identical to someone else. And so my encouragement is, if you feel this ever, okay, there's a reason. Everyone is different. Everyone has different interactions, and so you are unique in your own way, and that's what makes each and every one of you really awesome and really special. So it is a normal thing. So if you feel this, and it's okay, you kind of go through a little bit, but as you grow older, you'll realize that it's okay to make your own decisions, to take what you like about your local culture or global culture and make it your own, because that's what makes you unique and that's what makes you an individual. Okay, so I have just a little picture here. It's kind of funny. Tomato having an identity crisis. He says, "Am I a vegetable or fruit?" I don't know. I think it's a vegetable. You guys can comment and tell me what you think. Tell me I'm wrong. I'll sit and listen and wait for you guys to respond to that. So, all right. So for our little assignment today, what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you do a cultural reflection. There is a Google Doc that will be posted on Google Classroom that you can put this all in. It's not designed to be anything super long or super difficult, but I want you to think about yourself, because I think that's the best way for you to really understand how this works in your life. I want you to think about your local culture versus your global culture, and think about the ways you behave, think about the things you value. You can go back to our cultural dimensions, shallow versus deep culture, and think about what about your culture is influenced by local, so meaning like your family, where you live, your close friends, and then what is influenced by your global culture. What have you learned from other people, other parts of the world, anything like that, and how does that influence your culture? And then I want you to think about what you'll do is you'll just make a list of those things, as many things. So like for me, what I would say is local culture, growing up in Colorado, I did things like I like going outside and going on hikes. We did a lot of that. It's a big cultural thing in Colorado. I think in terms of like deep stuff, my family really values quality time. That's a love language of mine, and so I'm big on quality time with my family. But then global culture, obviously, I live in a different part of the country now, and I've been different places, and I think part of my identity, a lot of the foods I eat are based off of global culture. Um, I wouldn't say like the way I dress, because I dress pretty boring, but um, different things like that. You're just going to make a list of as many culturally influenced things as you can, and think about whether they fall under local or global. Then what I want you to do is think about why your cultural identity has been shaped this way. So what about those things in the global culture were interesting to you or looked of value to you, so that you were able to say, yeah, I'm going to make this a part of my identity and my culture? And what are some things within your local culture that you said, yeah, I want to hold on to this and keep this as my own culture? And then look and see, has your local culture changed? So like me, I moved, so my local culture now is here in Wisconsin, whereas it used to be in Colorado. Maybe you grew up in another state or another country, and that local culture changed. Maybe you live with two different families, whatever it is. Think about your local culture and how that has changed and how that might have affected your identity. And then lastly, you can think about, I'm not going to make you write this if you don't want to, but think about that identity confusion we talked about, and think about, have you experienced that? Do you have anything part of your identity or your culture that you're like, I don't know how this fits. I'm confused on this. I don't know where I belong, and kind of reflect on that a little bit. So that's it for today. Like I said, it's was pretty short. Go ahead and do this reflection. There will be a Dropbox or Google Classroom to do it. On Wednesday, I will be hosting a virtual mental health day for our month of April. It should be pretty fun. I look forward to seeing you guys all in there. If you're able to, I'll post the link and info for that on Google Classroom. But that's Globalization and Identity. Miss you guys a lot. Hope you're staying safe. And I'll hopefully see you on Wednesday. Bye.